Ryan Cam, and welcome back to the 1999 Project. After the high that was the Black Friday special, it's a bit of a come down this week. Not by much, but definitely enough to notice. But I've got four movies to cover, so let's get on with it. Starting off with part one of an accidental Julianne Moore double feature here on the episode this week. I didn't plan it. That's just how it happened. It's the end of the affair.
In a film by Neil Jordan.
You think love ends just because we don't see each other?
The End of the Affair.
The End of the Affair was directed by Neil Jordan. It's based on the book of the same name written by Graham Greene, and it starred Ralph Fiennes, Julianne Moore, and Stephen Ray. It tells the story of a writer played by Ralph Fiennes and a married woman played by Julianne Moore. They see each other in a sexual relationship behind the back of her husband, played by Stephen Ray. The relationship is very hot and cold. However, Stephen Ray's character begins to think that she is cheating on him, and so, at the insistence of the writer, he hires a private detective to essentially investigate himself. Yes, really. I had no knowledge of this book or this movie going into it, but I will admit, when the first line of dialogue of this movie is, "This is a diary of hate," I'm not gonna lie, the movie intrigued me. And really, that's the best I can describe this movie. Intriguing. It's not outwardly exciting in terms of it's not like a romantic thriller or anything, but this is really a performance-driven movie, and really that's going to be your litmus test of whether or not you like or hate this movie. If you like really strong character-based performances, you're going to love this movie. If you don't, it's not going to be for you. For me personally, as a fan of both Ralph Fiennes and Julianne Moore, I enjoyed this movie quite a bit. Ralph Fiennes and Julianne Moore are both in this, and they are both great. Ralph Fiennes in particular is the most interesting part of the movie because he starts off as legitimately a friend of both Julianne Moore and Stephen Ray. However, over the course of 5 or 6 years, the relationship just forms. They don't plan it. It just is what it is. And Stephen Ray begins to suspect, and then it just turns into a long and winding road. This is a pretty small movie in the grand scheme of things. It's just contained to these three main characters, and then there's the people from the private detective agency, yes, but it's really Ralph Fiennes, Julianne Moore, and Stephen Ray. They all carry the heft of the movie, and when they're on screen, especially together, I was really intrigued and I was sucked in. Like I said, it's gonna come down to whether you like slow, romantic, really performance-driven movies like this. If you don't, stay far away. For me personally, I thought the movie was very intriguing. My biggest negative is they play around with the structure a little bit, jumping from the present to the past and back again. That got very confusing at points. If they just made it a more straight line narrative, I think that would have helped me a little bit, but it didn't hinder the movie too much. I'm going to give this movie a good rating, but a high good rating. This is really hinging on the performances. The rest of the movie is just competent, but whenever Ralph Fiennes, Julianne Moore, and Stephen Ray act especially together, the movie is worth checking out. And on a bit of an aside, Ralph Fiennes is the main character in the movie, but there is a priest in the movie who is played by Jason Isaacs. That's right, a few years before they were in Harry Potter together, Voldemort and Lucius Malfoy were playing opposite each other. But now let's move on to just a very this is a very bizarre movie that is infected with Weinstein syndrome, but in kind of the wrong ways. It's Holy Smoke.
In an all-out battle of the sexes. Holy Smoke.
Holy Smoke was directed by Jane Campion, who would later go on to direct The Power of the Dog for Netflix, and it starred Harvey Keitel and Kate Winslet. It tells the story of a young woman played by Kate Winslet who is found out by her parents to be involved with a mysterious sex cult in India, and so she is brought home under the guise of her father having a stroke, and the family brings in a cult deprogrammer played by Harvey Keitel to snap her out of the cult-like thinking. However, something else also happens between the two of them. Jane Campion is very good at what she does, and so her direction is the best part of the movie. The movie looks great, sounds great. Harvey Keitel and Kate Winslet are Harvey Keitel and Kate Winslet, and they are both great. Bit of an aside, though. Kate Winslet was also in a movie earlier this year that I covered for the 99 Project, and I swear I cannot remember it off the top of my head. I'll put it in post now. But it also is about a movie about a young woman that runs away to India to get away from it all. That's just a bizarre coincidence to me. The movie is generally speaking pretty competent. However, my one issue, and it kind of killed my need to ever see this movie again, is the sort of kind of implications here. Basically, there is a whole thing in which the girl and the cult deprogrammer fall in love with each other. And yeah, it's not the best, really. And I've talked about it in like my review for American Beauty, for example, where I don't really like plots like this. Like where it's like an older man dating a younger woman. I just don't care for it. And I could be, in the case of Holy Smoke, getting way ahead of myself. I leave myself open to that. But in the grand scheme of things, at this plot, where it's supposed to be this man is coming in to do a job and drag her away from this cult, only to then fall in love with her when the man looks like he's comfortably in his 40s or 50s and she looks like in her mid 20s.
That one didn't age quite so well.
And once again, I stress that I could be looking way too deep into it, and if I am, then it is what it is. But considering who produced this and what happens between these people in this movie, it's a disturbing it's a disturbing coincidence. I'm just gonna leave it at that. All told, though, the movie is competent, it looks great, the performances are solid, but in terms of the subject matter, it's pretty forgettable to me. I have no plans on seeing this ever again. But now let's get to part two of the Julianne Moore double feature for this week, and a much, much more stressful movie than The End of the Affair. It's A Map of the World.
The strength of family and the power of forgiveness. A map of the world.
Map of the World was directed by Scott Elliott, and it starred Sigourney Weaver, Julianne Moore, and David Strathairn, among others. It tells the story of a school nurse played by Sigourney Weaver who, in a tragic accident, has the daughter of a dear friend played by Julianne Moore drown in the river behind their house. It was deemed an accident. However, prying eyes look into said accident, and it's come to find out that, well, this nurse is not exactly on the up and up when it comes to her treatment of the kids, and so she is slapped with child abuse charges and sent to jail. It's very rare when movies get a physical reaction out of me. I don't plan on it, it just happens like it happens. This movie gave me an actual headache. And it really comes down to number one, the subject material involved, and number two, just the general attitude of the movie. I admire the performances here. Sigourney Weaver and Julianne Moore are two very talented actresses. Julianne Moore is the best part of this movie, followed closely by David Strathairn, who like almost carries the movie on his back. And the movie, generally speaking, is competently made in terms of filming. The problem really comes down to, for me, like I said, the subject material and just the general attitude of the film. If you have ever seen this movie called The Glass Castle, it's pretty much a 90s equivalent of The Glass Castle. The Glass Castle is a very stressful movie about a woman who recounts her very difficult childhood with her pretty much abusive father who never got a job because he was air quotes fighting the system. It's a very sad and depressing movie to say the least. And A Map of the World is along that same vein. Not as depressing, but definitely along that same road. And because this movie was so distressing at points, it literally gave me a headache. The movie sets the tone right away where Sigourney Weaver's character's oldest daughter, every other word of dialogue that she has is, I hate you, Mom, and later she changes it up to, I hate you, Dad. Very nice child right there. And then, through flashbacks, I guess, we see that Sigourney Weaver's character is, in fact, has done some pretty sus at best things in her job as a school nurse. I won't spoil it here, but let's just say it involves this one poor boy who keeps getting sick all the time, and he does he fools around one too many times, and well, he finds out. I'm just going to leave it at that. David Strathairn's character goes from this kind of like farmer, just a chill guy, just doing his thing, to having to literally carry the burden of an entire family and a farm on his back, and the stress of that shining like a diamond. Julianne Moore's character loses a daughter in like the first 20 minutes, like her youngest daughter. She drowns in a lake behind this farm, and she just suffers for the rest of this movie. It's legitimately sad stuff. And I get that that was the point, and I'm more than willing to accept the fact that the movie was going for that. It succeeds. The problem is I had to watch this with my eyeballs and listen to it with my eardrums, and it was unpleasant. Even when Sigourney Weaver's character goes to prison, the fellow prisoners, well, one in particular, call her baby killer more than once, and they watch Oprah all the time. It's the 90s Glass Castle. I'm just going to leave it at that. To put a period at the end of the sentence of this section, the movie is not outright like terrible. It's competent, like I said, and the performances are strong. But this is a true one and done for me. I never care to see this ever again. I'm not going to go full horrid because legitimately, like I said, Julianne Moore and David Strathairn are very good at their jobs, especially here. I'm going to give this a forgettable rating because quite honestly, I would love to forget this. But now let's round things off by taking a look at just one of my absolute favorite filmmakers in the entire world, Woody Allen.
And there was much rejoicing.
It's Sweet and Lowdown.
I'm Emmett Ray. I'm the greatest guitar player in the world.
Sweet and Low Down was directed by Woody Allen and it starred Sean Penn and Samantha Morton. This is a mockumentary-style movie about the fictional life of Emmett Ray, a guitarist who is pretty well known in the jazz community. However, due to various vices, he pretty much just lost everything. I'm not really that big of a fan of Woody Allen, and I say that knowing that, yeah, he may have done some pretty questionable things in his personal life, but even if he was a saint, I've just never been a big fan of the movies of his that I have seen. I've seen a couple and they have just done nothing for me. I'm more than willing to visit movies like Annie Hall and Manhattan at a later date, but I've just never gotten around to it. I watched Annie Hall for the AFI project and I just was not a fan. I did not get it. And it kind of goes same thing with Sweet and Low Down. It's not a bad movie by any stretch. It's competent. There's some good moments here and really good performances, but the entire time I was just thinking to myself, why? Best part of the movie by a lot is Sean Penn. He really carries the movie on his back. And really, whenever he's on screen doing his jazz thing, it's legitimately very interesting. And it has a lot of the music biopic DNA involved in there, except it's not based on anyone real. Emmett Ray is a fictional jazz singer, but it's a lot of the same DNA weaved in, so that will annoy some. For me personally, I didn't mind it. What really kind of killed the movie for me, or my enjoyment for the movie, is that the fact that it is a mockumentary, and a mockumentary in which you'll be traveling along and you're like, okay, Sean Penn doing his thing, okay, and then it'll smash cut to a talking head talking about how Emmett Ray was this great but just misunderstood genius. And it took me out of the movie like so hard. And I don't necessarily I don't necessarily think that that style is a bad thing. I'm a big fan of mockumentaries. I've seen quite a few of them in my life from across genres. The problem with this one is that you're frequently reminded that this is not a real person because these randos will pop up being like, ah, yes, Mr. Ray, like he did this one thing that was highly questionable back then, but it just aged like a fine wine nowadays. And Woody Allen himself even pops up for narration, and it's like, what are we doing here, guys? This is not a Christopher Guest movie. Like, either be serious, like a serious mockumentary, or be a Christopher Guest movie. Like, choose one. Sweet and Lowdown is no Best in Show. It is no Waiting for Guffman. It is no Mighty Wind. It it's like an off-brand, non-union, legally distinct Christopher Guest. Chris Patron, if you will. And really, with the exception of Sean Penn's performance, the movie is pretty forgettable. Like, Sean Penn is trying very clearly, but he's given next to nothing to do, and just the movie is just nothing but questions to me. Well, what did you think of any of the movies I've talked about? Let me know in the comments. I would love to read what you have to say. And next week, it's going to be another busy one for this series, but one of the ones I will be covering is legitimately one of the very best of the year and one that I have never seen all the way through. I've seen clips, but I've never seen from beginning to end. Well, that's going to be rectified very soon. And here's a bit of a tell. Well, I'm very tired. This project has made me very... But that is all for me. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Ryan Can, and I'll see you in the next one.